What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Unsolved. I'm your host.
Today we're going back to Las Vegas, Nevada for a mafia mystery. Let's get into it. On January 26, 1957, Anthony Tony Salerno was enjoying a quiet afternoon at his home in Queens, New York. It was just an average day for a family man until two men he had never seen before approached him and asked him if he was Tony. When he said yes, they shot him multiple times, killing him in front of his wife. This was a well-calculated hit, as the assassins knew exactly who he was and were clearly willing to do whatever it took to get to him. But the police had no idea who would want the boss of the Lucchese crime family dead. After all, even though there had been a recent meeting between the heads of the five New York crime families and the bosses of the Chicago and Las Vegas crime families, it went very well. At this gathering, the mobsters discussed how to make millions off of legalized gambling in Nevada, along with how they could finally get a piece of the lucrative Hollywood movie industry. With the conference going so smoothly and everyone leaving on good terms, there seemed to be no obvious motive for someone to order a hit on one of the bosses. The last person to see Tony alive was his wife. She had gone to open the door when she heard the doorbell and was shocked to see two strangers standing on her stoop. The men looked like they were about 35 years old, around 5 feet 8 inches tall, and wearing dark clothing. The shorter of the two men then turned to her husband and asked, "Are you Anthony?" Startled by the question, Tony responded, "Yes." And that's when the men pulled out their guns and began firing. Mrs. Salerno immediately dove to the floor, shielding her body over her husband. When she looked up, she saw both men standing over them, aiming their guns directly at Tony, after shooting him several times. The men stood up, looked at each other, and left the house. Mrs. Salerno rushed to her husband's side and screamed for help as he lay dying on the floor. Paramedics arrived shortly after, but Tony was already gone. He had been shot 4 times, once in the head, once in the chest, once in the abdomen, and once in the leg. Police investigators assumed that the murder must have been committed by members of a rival crime family. However, after questioning every member of the New York Mafia, they learned that none of them had any information about the crime. Even more puzzling was that no one seemed to have any idea why anyone would want the boss dead. In fact, there was absolutely nothing that stood out about Salerno or anything related to his life that appeared to be a strong enough motive for murder. This lack of answers made the case go cold, and it remained unsolved for decades, until a former mobster came forward with some intriguing information. Joseph Joe, the Boss Barbera, was one of the most feared mobsters in New York during the 1950s. He was also one of the only people that had a solid alibi for the time of Tony's murder. After being arrested for Tony's murder, Joe agreed to testify against the other mobsters in exchange for a reduced sentence. And that's when he dropped a bombshell. He told the police that the real reason that Tony was killed was because he had stolen $1 million from the other bosses. Apparently, the money was supposed to be used for legal investments in Las Vegas, and Tony had pocketed it instead. Joe claimed that he had tried to convince Tony to return the money before, but Tony had refused. The bosses decided that they needed to teach Tony a lesson, so they hired 2 professional killers to pay him a visit. Joe said he was unsure if the hit was sanctioned by the whole commission or just a few of the bosses. But either way, he insisted that it wasn't him. But when the police searched Joe's house, they found the murder weapon hidden in the basement. It was clear that he was lying, but he wouldn't crack. That is until the police told him they had evidence that linked him to another unsolved murder. Joe finally confessed to the murder and was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Though he served his time, the murder always stuck with him. In later years, he said he couldn't sleep with all the ghosts of the people he murdered constantly haunting him. But was he really the killer? There were definitely some holes in his story. For one thing, he didn't know the actual amount that Tony had stolen. He originally told the police it was $100,000, then changed his story to $1 million after they pointed out that $100,000 would hardly be worth killing over. Additionally, Joe had a motive to lie. By implicating himself in the murder, he reduced his own prison sentence by several decades. Sure, he may have been involved in the planning stages, but it seems highly unlikely that he actually did the dirty work. There were also no physical links that connected him to the scene of the crime. And although the police found the murder weapon in his house, there was no evidence that he had actually fired the gun. So who really killed Tony Salerno? Some believe that it was Joe Barbera, but others think he was just trying to protect himself. A third theory suggests that the hit was ordered by a mysterious crime boss named Sean Conlon. Conlon was the head of a small crime family that operated in Queens. Not much is known about him except that he had a massive gambling operation and frequently clashed with Tony over territory. It's possible that things got so bad between the two that Conlon ordered a hit on Tony, but again, there's no hard evidence to support this claim. Another strange aspect of the murder is that no one knows who the two gunmen were. It's likely that they were hired guns, but the police never uncovered their identities, and none of the mobsters that were questioned had any idea who they could possibly be. This makes it seem like the assassins were outsiders, which means the murder may not have even been committed by a member of the mafia. In fact, it's possible that the murder was committed by a member of the government. During the early days of organized crime investigations, it was uncommon for law enforcement to take matters into their own hands and eliminate a target instead of bringing them to justice in court. Sometimes they believed that it was too dangerous to bring charges against these mobsters, due to the risk of retaliation. So they secretly assassinated them instead. Considering Tony's involvement in illegal activities, it's certainly plausible that he met this fate, but unfortunately, there's no way to prove it. As far as what happened to the case, it remains unsolved to this day.
Oh.
The police never identified the two gunmen, and no one was ever charged with the murder. Now, theories about who could have done such a thing circulated around town, but everyone involved in the investigation kept their lips sealed. Officially, they still don't know who killed Tony. Now, if you've watched our other videos, you know that the mob has a code of silence. That means they rarely snitch on each other to the police. So it's unlikely that the truth will ever come out now. If you want to hear more about unsolved mysteries, make sure you check out the rest of our content. We cover everything from missing persons to cult activity. So what do you think happened to Tony? Is it an inside job, or did someone outside the mafia kill him? Let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoy true crime stories like this, then please follow us because we have more coming soon. As always, I'm your host. Till next time, stay safe.